Something really big has been happening in the last few hours around Bernardo Silva and FC Barcelona. And this time we're not talking about rumors, we're not talking about leaks, and we're not talking about just Barça showing interest. We're talking about facts, about journalists who claim that the deal is practically done. And pay attention, because the information that just came out completely changes the whole picture. Because while many thought that Atlético de Madrid was gaining ground on Barça, while many media outlets claimed that Barça had a lot of doubts, now there's information that sparks excitement among the Barça fans. And journalist Gianluigi Longari has been very clear. According to his information, Bernardo Silva is all but done for Barcelona. That signing is practically done and sealed. Only a few final details are missing. And most importantly, Barça is ahead of all the teams that are interested in him, all of them, including Atlético de Madrid. And this is key because in recent weeks, it seemed that Atlético was pushing very hard. There were even rumors that Bernardo's signing with Atlético de Madrid was practically done. Remember that. It seemed like they were willing to put in more money and wanted to take advantage of any doubts from Barça. But the reality would be very different, because Bernardo would already have made a decision. And that decision brings him much closer to arriving at Camp Nou. But wait, because the most important part is coming now. Because there's a very specific reason why this deal has sped up tremendously, and it has a lot to do with the departure that has just been finalized. A departure that frees up a huge amount of salary cap space. And that brings Bernardo even closer. Bernardo Silva to Barça. Watch out, because it's the Ansu Fati deal. He's practically sold already, and that changes absolutely everything. But before we get there, we have to talk about Hansi Flick. Because there was a question that was still on the table. A totally fundamental question. Did Flick want Bernardo Silva? That was the big question. Because it's one thing for Deco to want him. It's another thing for Laporta to say, yes, I want that signing. And something very different, as you all already know, is for the coach to give the final approval. Well, the latest information is clear. Flick has already given the green light. Flick believes that Bernardo Silva could be a strategic addition. And here's a very important detail. Because many fans see Bernardo Silva only as a midfielder. But Flick sees much more. He sees a player capable of playing centrally. He can also play as an attacking midfielder, as you already know. He's able to play out wide as well. And even help in building up play from the back. This makes a lot of sense. He's a total utility player. And that, in a long season where Barça will compete for La Liga, the Champions League, the Cup, and the Super Cups, has a truly enormous value. Because if there's one thing this year has shown, it's that when certain players are missing, the team's level drops considerably. Especially, for example, when Pedri isn't on the pitch. Remember that. And that's precisely where Bernardo Silva comes in. A player who understands the game like few others, who knows when to speed things up, when to slow the game down, when to link up with his teammate, when to appear between the lines to hurt the opponent. That's why Flick ended up saying yes. That's why Barça ended up pushing so hard for it. And that's why the deal is, as of today, at this moment, further along than many people imagine. It's true that maybe not much is being said about it right now. But internally, friends of Barça Hoy, it's pretty much a done deal. But pay attention, because here comes another detail that might surprise more than one person. Because Bernardo Silva is willing to make a huge sacrifice. A financial sacrifice. Not every player does this. But when someone does it, the fans always tend to appreciate it a lot. A sacrifice that shows just how much Bernardo wants to wear the Blaugrana shirt. Because according to reports coming from Catalonia, and pay attention to this, the Portuguese player is willing to give up a very significant part of his salary. And this completely changes the deal. There are many, let's say, many details that are bringing Bernardo a little closer to Barça every day. Because one of the biggest difficulties, as you all know, that Barça has always had is financial fair play. The departure of Lewandowski and the departure of Ansu Fati himself are making things easier. And of course, it wasn't about the players' level, it wasn't Barca's wish, it wasn't Bernardo's wish, it was nothing other than that financial fair play. What was perhaps keeping Bernardo away from the Barça team every year. But now the scenario is different. And here comes the absolutely key news. Because Ansu Fati is going to sign for Monaco. In fact, everything points to it possibly becoming official in the next few hours. And pay attention to those numbers, because the deal would free up nearly 20 million euros of room under financial fair play rules. 20 million euros. That's huge. And that has direct consequences, because those 20 million create margin, create space, create the ability to register players, and above all, bring peace of mind in the boardroom. That's why there's so much optimism within the club, because we're not just talking about a desired signing, we're talking about a viable signing. And that's a very, very big difference, guys, because for years, Barça has wanted many players, but they haven't been able to sign them. For example, in the case of Nico Williams. And now this can actually be done. And this is where another very important piece of information comes in. Because Sport 3 has been very clear. There's a green light to sign Bernardo Silva. Total agreement. Listen to this. Total agreement. Barça considers the Portuguese player a strategic addition for the midfield. And when a media outlet so close to the Barça camp talks like this, it's because something is really happening. Because the feeling is that all the pieces fit perfectly. Flick gives his approval. Deco has been working on it for months. Bernardo, of course, most importantly, wants to come to Barça. One more thing, he's willing to lower his salary. Ansu frees up salary space. And Barça is definitely starting to move under the one-to-one rule, friends. There are too many signs, too many pieces that are fitting together at the same time, and there's still more. Ansu may not be the only one leaving. This is important, because the club is still working to create even more margin if possible. And here two names come up, Marc Asado and Roni Bardaghi. Two deals that could be closed soon. Maybe they're the two players who will be the next two players to leave. Two deals that would help even more with financial fair play. And that will make it easier for new signings to arrive, because that's Barca's idea. First, you free up space. Then, you finish the deals. And that's where Bernardo appears as the absolute priority. And you might ask me, what about Julian Alvarez? Well, for now we're waiting. Nothing has been finalized yet. There are talks, but they seem a bit more stalled. That doesn't mean they're over. It doesn't mean the signing won't happen. But for now, Barca's strategic priority is to bring in Bernardo Silva. That's the sporting priority. And it's the top priority in the transfer market, according to all the journalists. Because you don't get the chance to sign a player of this level every day. We're talking about one of the most important players in Guardiola's city. We're talking about a European champion, a footballer who has won practically everything. And we're talking about a player who still has several years of football ahead of him. That's why Flick is so convinced. That's why Deco has insisted so much. And that's why Barca is speeding things up, because they know that an opportunity like this doesn't come around every summer. And now comes the big question. Is the deal done? Only minor details are missing, guys. That's what Gianluigi Longari, another journalist from Italy, says. There are still some details left, but the feeling is very clear. Barca is in pole position. No one is above them. Barca is leading everything. They're first in the race. In fact, they're even ahead of Atlético de Madrid. And the best part is, Barca has the players' approval. And when you put all these conditions together, the deal starts to seem much closer than we imagined just a week or a few days ago. That's why the next few hours are going to be decisive. I can assure you of that. They're going to be absolutely decisive. The official announcement about Ansu Fati could come soon. Departures are progressing. The fair play situation has improved, and Bernardo Silva is waiting, knowing that Barca is working on it. He knows that the agreement exists, and he knows that Flick has given the green light. Maybe it's not the most high-profile signing, maybe it's not the most expensive, maybe it's not the most spectacular. But it could be one of those moves that ends up making a difference when the big matches come. And seeing everything that's happening, it feels like Bernardo Silva is closer than ever to joining FC Barcelona.